Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad.
We are back at it again, everybody. It's That Effin' Sports Show, EFIN, at That Effin' Show on Twitter, and we are back with Adam Hulse to talk some football like we do every week. This week, AFC West. NFL, I'd say, is kind of quiet right now, but that doesn't mean that the free agency impact still hasn't happened in the AFC West. That's what we're going to get into today, Adam. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling great. We're about 3 weeks from the draft. You're right. Things are kind of quieting down, settling down for these next couple of weeks. And then once the draft gets really close, you know, that week of the draft and on the draft days, you're going to see some trades. You're going to see some things happen. And then post-draft, when teams didn't get what they want, that's when the aftermath will happen also.
That's what's so exciting, is that the draft is around the corner. And so you know stuff is going to happen just before and, of course, immediately after the draft. And so the tension is there, right? Like, we've still got Lamar Jackson unresolved. We've still got Aaron Rodgers unresolved. We're going to see where these rookies go. When we talk about the AFC West, obviously we have the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. We've got the Broncos, who we're going to get into, aren't picking till round 3 now. The Raiders have made some big moves. The Chargers are kind of in limbo. They're supposed to be so great. We'll start with the Chargers. 21st pick. The reason I want to start with the Chargers is because it's just, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of tension. Eckler looking for a trade. They restructure Bosa and Mack and Allen and Williams to make sure that they can make moves so they can keep the team together. Herbert, supposed to be like Mahomes and then Herbert. And Herbert, I think, was number 2 in pass yards last year. A lot of potential unrealized. They restructure these contracts. They haven't lost a lot. They lose Tranquil to Kansas City, which is interesting, being, you know, division rivals and stuff. They lose DeAndre Carter to Las Vegas, again, within the division. Adderley retires at safety. They bring in Kendricks from Minnesota. Great ad. Big win there. But that's really all they've done. So they restructure all these contracts. Eckler's not happy, looking for a trade, but nothing's really going on with the Chargers so far.
Well, you know, it's like maybe like they were, you know, restructuring these contracts so that they could kind of, you know, pay Eckler if he's looking for a raise, that kind of a deal. But it seems like he wants out. And he was pretty outspoken about it back, you know, when it first got announced. But that kind of seems to have died down a little bit, disappeared a little bit. Doesn't mean that, you know, he now wants to stay, because he hasn't said that either. But like, it's strange how there's been very little buzz about a guy like Eckler, who over the last few years has been arguably the most productive running back in the entire NFL with what he does rushing, receiving, and he's been a touchdown machine as well. So very strange to me how little buzz is going around with the Eckler trade situation. And look, you talked about Justin Herbert. To me, look, like, I'm just going to come out and say it. Justin Herbert, I think he's a very good quarterback, maybe even a great quarterback. And by me saying this is not me saying that he's not exactly that, but he has become, in my opinion, a bit overrated around the NFL. People talk about him in the same breath as a Patrick Mahomes and as guys like that, and I just don't think Herbert has done enough in his career to get the kind of praise that he got. Now, again, I'm saying I think he's a top 5, maybe top 10 quarterback, so I think he's great. I don't think he's Mahomes. I don't even think he's Burrow or Josh Allen quite yet. And if we're being honest, there's a guy we talked about a couple weeks ago who I would take over Justin Herbert right now, and that's Trevor Lawrence. Justin Herbert, he puts up the numbers. He's only been to the playoffs one time. He hasn't won a playoff game yet. I think he's talented. I think he's a great thrower, but like, let's pump the brakes a little bit on putting him in a class like Mahomes.
I 100% agree with you. It's funny because every time I talk about Herbert, there's one picture in my head. That's Matt Stafford. To me, they are the same quarterback at this point in their careers. Great talent, good team around them, unable to realize the potential. And of course, Stafford went on, and we know what he's done, but Stafford was always somebody that couldn't quite finish it, regardless of the talent they had, and I kind of see Herbert as that guy right now.
You know, that's a great comparison. I've never made that one in my head, but that is a really good one. And Herbert has an even better team around him than Stafford has. I mean, when you look at the talent on the Chargers roster, top to bottom, they're one of the most talented teams in the league. They were last year as well. They were the year before when they missed the playoffs, when they lost that crazy Week 18 overtime game against the Raiders. They got there last year. They had that massive lead against against the Jaguars, and they blew that game too. So I'm not saying that's all on Herbert. I know coaching has something to do with it as well, and there's other factors. It's not just on the quarterback, but when you're supposed to be as good as Herbert is, as good as most people consider him, and have that type of a roster behind him, I think he should be having a little bit more team success than he's had.
And that's the exact same conversation we had 10 years ago with Stafford. I mean, he had phenomenal receiving core with Megatron and so on, a great running back core, had the team, couldn't get it done. And I think that those years, honestly, with Stafford is where mentally this comparison comes in. But you brought up that loss. That's going to have lingering effects coming into the season. People are going to be talking about it until the Chargers can overcome a similar situation or prove people wrong, prove that it was a fluke. And I agree, there is probably more coaching involved there than player performance. It's still there, and it's still something they're going to have to deal with. We're talking about free agency. They bring in Kendrick, which is good, but again, they haven't really done anything to change the team. They haven't done anything. They did keep their talent. They kept Bosa, they kept Mack, they kept Allen and Williams, and that's 100% crucial that they did that. Not a lot of interest is the word on the street with Eckler. I don't know if he's asking for too much money. It's the only thing I can think of, or people are just waiting for the draft or what. As a player, you're right. Teams have to be interested in him, but for whatever reason, he's not getting picked up. The Chargers are just kind of an anomaly to me. They're just kind of stagnant, I think, and I don't know if that's where they need to be right.
One last thing on Herbert. I'm not sure, I've ever seen a quarterback this early in his career get anointed like the second coming, as if he's, the top 2 player in the NFL, quarterback in the NFL, with as little success as Herbert has had. And on that same note, someone for that lack of team success, despite lighting it up on the stat sheet, it seems like nobody ever puts any of the blame on Herbert. All they ever blame is the coach, Brandon Staley, and this, that, and the other thing. It never seems like people are putting some of this blame on Herbert to play as good as he does, but not get it done when it means the most.
Well, you ask players, that's quarterback rule number 1. It's never the quarterback's fault. I think a lot of us disagree with. Andrew Luck is the name that comes to mind for me. I never understood all the hype around Andrew Luck. He was supposed to be this amazing guy. Everybody liked him, even up until he retired. He was always counted among the elite. I never saw the resume. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. But Andrew Luck was another guy that immediately was tagged as the second coming of Joe Montana or something and never realized it. As a Chargers fan, as a football fan, you kind of got to worry about Herbert and when's he finally going to break through, because you've got one of the best receiving tandems in the game, probably top 3 receiving tandems in the game. You've got Bosa back there. You've got Mack back there on defense. You've got arguably the best receiving running back in the game. I think he is the best with Eckler. You can only blame so much on the coaches, and I think you can blame a lot on the coaches. With that much talent, like you said, what else do you need? I mean, how much? I can't hand you much else than that to get it done with.
Right, and it's crazy with Eckler, too, because again, like I said it before, he's been as productive as any running back over the last few years. But when you ask most people around the NFL, give me your top 3 or top 5 running backs or whatever, it's rare that Eckler's name is even on that list. Like, fantasy community knows how good Eckler is as a fantasy player. But when you're just talking about straight NFL and who are the best running backs in football, his name doesn't often get mentioned, and it definitely should.
It 100% should. And maybe he gets overshadowed by the drama within the division and having Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in that division. That's obviously going to be the number 1 topic of conversation when we're talking about the AFC West. And so maybe that has something to do with it getting overshadowed by the talent within the division. And so we go to the Chiefs, who of course won the Super Bowl. And this is kind of the difference to me, that the contrast tells the story between the Chargers, who have been kind of stagnant. They kept their talent, and then the Chiefs, who have been super busy. And it kind of reminds me of New England during the Super Bowl years. I feel like they kind of did the same thing. They lose some talent. Of course, they lose Juju to the Pat. They lose Hartman to the Jet. Ronald Jones goes to Dallas, which he was only playing a backup role anyway. Thornhill to Cleveland. Sanders to New Orleans. Obviously, the big loss is Orlando Brown Jr. goes to Cincinnati, but they're bringing in people as well. So they get Taylor from the Jags. They get, I always mess up his name, Almanahu from San Francisco. They get Tranquil from the Chargers. They steal him. They get Mike Edwards from Tampa Bay. They get Coward from Indianapolis, making changes to an already already awesome team.
Now, look, I mean, let's just put it this: does it even matter like what like the rest of the roster is at this point? Like, for as long as they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, arguably Travis Kelce, right? Like, if they didn't have Kelce, if Kelce went down for the year, retired, or something like that, we don't know how that would affect them. But remember, when they lost Tyreek Hill, 90% of the NFL world said, well, this is going to be a wake-up call for Patrick Mahomes. He's going to take a huge step backwards without Tyreek Hill stretching the field, and the defense doesn't have to respect Tyreek Hill anymore, and blah, 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 blah. What did he do? He went on and he won an MVP and a Super Bowl ring. Losing Juju, who cares? Losing McCole Hardman, who cares? Losing both of those two combined are, in my opinion, nowhere near as big as losing Tyreek Hill, and he won an MVP the year after that. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with the Chiefs, despite some of the changes. A lot of the changes they made, like you said, the Brown for Taylor, yeah, they lost the tackle, they added a tackle. It's kind of more financial and logistical type changes, but nothing major, in my opinion. The Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs again.
Absolutely. And I'm going to make the comparison again. The Belichick, Brady, Gronk, New England Patriots, and the now Mahomes, Reid, Kelce Chiefs, they plug and play. They switch people out, and it doesn't make a difference because with the Pats, they kept Brady, Gronk, and Belichick. And with the Chiefs right now, they've got Mahomes, Reid, and Kelce. And as long as you've got those pieces there, it just seems like you can plug and play with everybody else, and you're still going to be a contender. I really see a huge comparison between those two. I'll call them dynasties. Chiefs maybe aren't there just yet, but they're definitely on their way.
Oh, yeah. They're definitely on their way, and it's definitely fair to start talking about them in that sense. And you're 100% right. They have the right head coach. They obviously have the right quarterback. And then they have a couple of very important, such as Kelce, like we just said. But then they believe in the philosophy of our system is more important necessarily than the players. We have a system. We have a design by Reid. We have the perfect guy to execute it in Mahomes. We don't have to surround him with a million other superstars. Let's just get the right guys that make sense for what we want to do. And what you see them keep doing with receivers, and this has been a trend with Andy Reid forever, even when he was in Philadelphia, he gets speedy receivers. He likes speed at the wide receiver position. He doesn't necessarily need superstar receivers. He needs fast guys that can run his route packages, stretch the field, and that's kind of what he does best.
What do you think about Kansas City's situation right now in that department? You bring up the receivers. I mean, they just got rid of both their starters. You talk about the system. I agree with that. I think the Chiefs have a system. It clearly works. But what is the plan at the receiver position when you talk about that? Because they don't have starters right now.
Right, yeah, and I think they're going to be just fine. They're going to get guys either in the draft or free agency. Like I said, with some speed, they're going to fill those roles. Travis Kelce is their superstar in the passing game. You know, he 150% is their superstar. I mean, he's a tight end, but he's right among the best receivers in the NFL, regardless of position. He's the feature guy, and just fill in the speed around him. I have no concerns whatsoever that the Chiefs are going to be just fine this year. We're going to be talking about them as Super Bowl contenders again. As long as Mahomes is healthy, they're here to stay for a very long time.
They obviously have the 31st pick in the first round, last pick. They're big receivers right now. Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. Not a horrible lineup. I mean, there's worse ones in the NFL.
They all got
definitely an opportunity for these guys to make bigger names for themselves. I like Sky Moore. Interested to see how his potential goes under this system. And of course, Kadarius Toney is someone that the Giants relied on for a long time, and I think he could be very successful in this system as well.
I mean, Toney, health has always been his biggest thing, right? You know, like when Toney plays, he's been productive and he's looked good. It's just staying on the field that's kind of been the issue for Toney. And I agree with you on Sky Moore. He received very limited playing time last year, but they designed some packages for him, some gadget type stuff for him. We might see more of that this year, or we might see him in more of a traditional slot receiver type of role. They drafted him pretty high last year, so they do think highly of him. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops.
I'm over in South Carolina. I've seen him play. I really do like the potential there. So that takes us to the Raiders. The Raiders obviously trade Carr off to New Orleans. They bring in Garoppolo. They bring in Jacoby Myers. They lose Stidham to Denver. They lose Billings to Chicago. Hollins goes to Atlanta. Not huge losses other than Carr. They bring in Garoppolo, which I think is a good trade-off for Carr. They bring in Jacoby Myers, Epps from Philly, Philman at linebacker from Pittsburgh, Hooper as another tight end from Tennessee, and they have a great system for the tight end. It's something that Hooper could be very successful in for how much time he has left. DeAndre Carter comes in from the Chargers, again, interdivisional pickup there, and then they bring in Brian Hoyer, career backup. He's not a bad guy to have there to fill in. So, I mean, the Raiders are making moves. They're clearly making changes. There's a change in philosophy. There's a change in what they want to do. They got to keep Adams and Jacobs happy, but the Raiders are kind of doing the right thing right now.
Yeah, I mean, the one big loss was Darren Waller. They traded Waller to the Giants. That is the big loss. That's kind of Hooper coming in, I guess, to replace that, pair him with Morrow. They made some, like the Jacoby Myers move was a little bit surprising to me. I didn't see that one coming, but it was a smart move. Jacoby Myers is kind of the guy replacing Darren Waller, though they have different positions on the depth chart. Waller's a receiver. He's not your traditional blocking type of tight ends. He's mostly a receiver from that position, and he splits out wide for the Raiders fairly often. He's not always lined up tight. They do like to split him as well. But, the Hoyer thing you said, that's a Josh McDaniels move. That's, bringing a veteran guy over from the Patriots who knows your system, that we know Jimmy Garoppolo has all the injury problems and this and that if he goes down for a game or two, Hoyer could pretty easily step in because he already knows what McDaniels likes to do. The interesting thing for me with the Raiders is though they went out and got Garoppolo and, like you said, signed Hoyer to be his backup, all the buzz about the Raiders around the draft right now is that they want to draft a quarterback in the first round, in the top 10. And there's even rumors that they're trying to trade up even higher to make sure that they get one of the guys that they want. To me, that probably means they're looking obviously at Richardson or Will Levis. And that's kind of also an insurance policy for Garoppolo's health, but also they see if they're really thinking quarterback in the top 5 or 10 of this draft, they're thinking short-term Garoppolo. Let Garoppolo do for the rookie kind of what the Niners wanted him to do with Trey Lance, and he's kind of just a placeholder until whatever rookie they take is ready, if all the rumors are true that they're looking to move up and make a move for a quarterback.
And you can never tell with the rumors. I mean,
right.
We've talked about this before. You never know what's going to happen until it actually happens. We did talk last week about the Raiders possibly trading up into the Seahawks position because the Seahawks don't need a quarterback, getting that fourth quarterback, whoever that is that's left. It wouldn't be a bad move for the Raiders. It's a good philosophy. Obviously, Garoppolo is just going to shrug his shoulders and say, okay, whatever, and do what Garoppolo does. He'll try to keep his spot and earn his spot. It's got to be frustrating for Garoppolo if that happens, to have the exact same thing that happened in San Francisco happen to him again with the Raiders.
Presumably, you're right. But I mean, who knows? Maybe when they signed Garoppolo, they kind of told him the plan from the start. Like, hey, look, you're our guy this year and you're our starter for now, but just so you know, we are looking to draft a quarterback in the first rounds for the future. And Garoppolo might have said, hey, that's cool. Do what you got to do. Like Garoppolo seems to me like he kind of is that guy. We've never once heard him publicly complain about anything besides, despite the fact that the Niners have shafted him a little bit. With him bringing them to a Super Bowl in all the games he's won for them, the only thing he did wrong in San Fran, besides that Super Bowl we talked about a couple episodes ago with that one throw in the fourth quarter, and it's been his health, which it's, that's not really his fault, his health, but when he's played, he's been spectacular in terms of team success for the 49ers, and they just kind of keep pushing him to the side like he's completely replaceable.
I mean, that's kind of the song of his career. They did it to him in New England. They did it to him in San Francisco. It'd be a shame to see it happen again with the Raiders, but yeah, I mean, that definitely could be the plan. He's still got a shot. I mean, let's not take that away from him. He's got Adams, Myers, and Jacobs sitting there. He's got the talent around him. We'll see what coaching does. Got fantastic defensive pieces. I don't know. It's a tough division, right? Because you have the Chiefs there. I think at this point, you've got the Chargers there with a lot of talent, and now you bring in the Broncos. This division is ridiculous because you've got the Super Bowl champion Chiefs, you've got an overly loaded Chargers, now you have equally as loaded Raiders team, and then bring in the Broncos who bring in Sean Payton. You've already got Russell Wilson, who I think Payton can make Wilson into what he was supposed to be originally. They bring in McClinchy, they get Powers from Baltimore. A lot of it, they get P. Ryan to help out, they get Callaway to help out at the wide receiver position, Kyle Eller from Seattle. They really haven't lost a lot. They lost Draymond Jones to Seattle, but really they lost Anderson, they lost Beck, they lost Edmonds, guys that were all just kind of supporting guys anyway, so they haven't really lost anything other than their draft pick. They do not have a draft pick until the third round, 67th overall, because they brought in Peyton. Rookie talent isn't necessarily going to be a factor, and it's not that you can't find people in the third round. Mr. Irrelevant is doing okay from last year. There's definitely talent in those rounds. You're just probably not getting like the next top wide receiver or top running back looking for linemen on either side of the ball. The Broncos have set themselves up to be successful, but I think they're probably the biggest question mark in the division.
Well, look, the Broncos still have a good defense. They have one of the best defensive secondaries in the NFL. And look, like, I know the whole, they spent a lot of draft picks to get Sean Payton. They spent a lot of draft picks to get Russell Wilson. And that is a good point. But, like, to me, like, especially when you look at their offense is very young right now. They're pretty much offense minus Russell Wilson. He's not necessarily young, but the rest of that offense, it's already built for the long term. When you have Judy and Cortland Sutton and Javonte Williams, that is even Greg Dulcich, who looked, kind of like a breakout tight end possibly last year. That is a very young core offense that's like ready to go for the next 5 to 10 years. Like, they don't need much other building pieces on that offense. And look, for me, with Sean Payton, a lot of teams wanted Sean Payton, right? He picked the Broncos. And to me, that means a lot. That means he believes in Russell Wilson a lot more than most around the NFL believe in Russell Wilson. You really think Sean Payton would have came out from behind the desk and back into coaching if he didn't think Russell Wilson could still be a superstar? There's no chance in hell he would have went to Denver unless he fully believed Russell Wilson can still be that MVP candidate version of himself, that Super Bowl contending version of himself that Denver thought they were getting when they originally traded for him. Now, let's remember how much of a disaster Nathaniel Hackett was as a head coach in Russell Wilson's first season ever playing for a new team in a new city in a brand new head coaching system. Hackett was way over his head, not just with the terrible in-game decisions and bad clock management. His press conferences were a mess. He always seemed flustered and overwhelmed. He was not ready to be a head coach. That was a bad hire by the Denver Broncos. And now Russell Wilson's obviously a seasoned veteran, but look at what Trevor Lawrence did compared with Urban Meyer versus Doug Peterson. When you have a confident, legitimate head coach, it really makes a huge difference. Anyone who thinks coaching doesn't really matter in the NFL is out of their mind. Out of their minds. There's a reason why the same coaches often have sustained success, because coaching really matters. And when you give Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, one of the best offensive minds in the entire NFL, as an upgrade from Hackett, who was a disaster, I think the Broncos take a huge step forward this year.
The pieces are there, and it's just going to be if the potential is realized. I love the Jag reference and comparison there because I think that's spot on. I'm sitting here looking at it, and while you're talking, obviously the Chiefs are the contenders to win that division, if not the conference. When you talk about what the Raiders have, what the Broncos have now, let's remember that Sean Payton was done. He was happy. He had his feet kicked up. He was going to go spend time with his family. He's going to spend all that money that he's been making over the years and just be one of the great coaches in NFL history. And then he decided to come back out. He decided to get back into the game for this team. And I think that's maybe one of the most relevant things that people are kind of overlooking, is that he could have gone anywhere. He could have just stayed retired. He could have took his big TV contract, become an analyst, whatever, and just relax. But he decided, he looked at this team and said, we can win this. Even though the Chiefs are in this division, even though the Chargers are in this division, we got a shot. I got a shot here in Denver. That's a big ask. That's some big belief at positive thinking when you have the Chiefs sitting right there and you decide, I'm going to come back in. I'm going to take this Denver Broncos team that everybody thinks is a dumpster fire, because I 100% agree that there's nobody that doesn't think Hackett was just a ridiculous experiment gone wrong. And Sean Payton says, I can take on the Chiefs. I can do that. He doesn't go to the NFC. He doesn't go to another division. He comes to the same spot where the Chiefs are and basically throwing the gauntlet down to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes saying, we're coming for you.
Right, and I don't want to downplay how bad Russell Wilson was last year. He was a disaster too. It's not all on Hackett. Russell was bad. But for most of the people around the NFL to talk about Russell Wilson like he's toast, he's washed up, his career's over, he's done, I think that's, a little too soon to say that. I mean, it's not like he was falling off of a cliff in Seattle before he got traded. He was still playing well, and he was expected to come over to Denver last year, and people were talking about Denver as a dark horse Super Bowl contender. And one disastrous year in a new environment with a bad head coach, with all the changes that were made to his life and to his career, I don't think it's time to write off Russell Wilson just yet.
He's definitely on the other side of it, but you look at a Matt Stafford who won the Super Bowl, you look at a number of quarterbacks who weren't supposed to be relevant anymore and end up at least making a deep run in the playoffs, if not winning the whole thing. Sometimes you just need that system. You need that guy to come in and bring it all together. And the Broncos are one of those teams, as you brought up, that seems to be the thing. They spent the draft picks to get the quarterback they wanted. They spent more draft picks to get the coach they wanted. Now it's going to be on those two to bring it all together and make it happen. I don't know if they're ready to take the Chiefs over yet.
In my opinion, Russell Wilson could have one more run left in him, but more importantly, Sean Payton thinks Russell Wilson could have one more run left in him.
That is important. It's important to Russ. It's important to the team. It's important to the fan base.
He wouldn't be there if he didn't think that.
I don't know if they're ready to take on the Chiefs just yet, but they can definitely contend with the Raiders and the Chargers, and it's going to be interesting to see who comes in second. That's not to automatically hand Chiefs the first, but they've earned that right. They've earned that respect to be considered the front runner for that whole conference, honestly. You're looking for the wild card spot. You're looking for that second spot, but this is a situation this year where this is the division I'm looking at to put 2, maybe 3 teams in the playoff.
For sure. I mean, it's definitely a loaded division. It was supposed to be a loaded division last year as well. Remember all the buzz, everything around the AFC West, especially when Russell first got traded? People saying this division is so stacked, all 4 teams might make the playoffs. Look, it seems like we talk about this on just about every episode. That's what's so beautiful about the NFL, right? Everything that you think is going to happen, most of it is not going to play out that way. With the Raiders making the playoffs the year before and being a disaster last year, despite adding Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones. They were a much better team on paper last year than the year before, but the year before makes the playoffs, and last year they were never in contention from start to finish. It's what makes the NFL so awesome.
I think the way the Raiders handled the Carr in general, it had a big impact on that, because that didn't just happen from week 15 to week 16. It wasn't just like, we love Carr, he's our guy, and then the next week is like, nah, never mind, we're going to bench him. That didn't just happen. That was going on throughout the whole season, or at least a good part of it. Sure, that affected gameplay. Waller wasn't playing the same way that he did. Something was going on in Las Vegas, and we don't know that it's over yet.
The organization was pissed. They said, look, we went out and we got your guy, Devontae Adams, and you regressed? We got you the superstar you wanted, your best friend from college, all this other stuff, and then you don't show up? See ya.
It is what it is. The new season is upon us. The draft isn't going to make a big impact for the Broncos. The Broncos have already had their draft, and they've got their team, and they'll pick up some linemen or something throughout the draft who will probably have an impact. Sean Payton, gets good guys. The Chiefs are set regardless of who they have there. That team is set up. The Chargers, we'll wait to see if they can pull it together. And the Raiders is kind of one of the teams that everybody's watching to see if Garoppolo has the impact that they want, if these ads, and they've got that 7th pick. So what are they going to do with that is also going to be a big thing. I'm really excited about this draft because of storylines like that. You got the Colts sitting at 4, Seahawks sitting at 5, Raiders sitting at 7. These first 10 picks, these first 7, 8 picks, I think are going to be a lot of fun.
And, these 4 teams that we just talked about from the AFC West, these are 4 built teams that are ready to go, that don't necessarily have any glaring needs. None of these 4 teams have any excuses this year. These are all supposed to be playoff teams, and it's unlikely that all 4 of them are going to get in. At least 1 or 2 of them we're probably going to be talking about this time next year of what a disaster their year was. But no excuses for any of the 4. They all got what they wanted.
If it's the Chargers we're talking about again, I think you see some major major changes coming in LA next year. If they blow it again.
At the very least, Staley will be out. There's no way he can survive another year.
They restructured all these contracts. They kept the talent. They believe in what they have. I honestly think if they blow it again, Herbert might be one of the guys that gets a new address.
He is going to be looking to get paid like one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, as he should be looking for that. He's going to be looking at, whatever a guy like Joe Burrow gets and stuff like that. And if he doesn't start having more team success with this incredible team that they built around him, they may be reluctant to give it to him.
It's going to be real hard to do. And then the other guys who become available to leave, they may not want to stick around. You've got all this talent here, and we can't get it done. Maybe I just need to go somewhere else.
If they can't get it done with what they have going into this year, I mean, look, Eckler is obviously, of course, the big question mark. But if they can't get it done with this stacked roster, they may have to blow it up. They might not have any other choice.
It's going to be interesting. The AFC West, definitely one that I'm watching. There's a reason we're kind of saving it here towards the end. We've only got a couple more weeks. Draft around the corner. The build-up is there. I'm on pins and needles. I'm not exaggerating to see what's going to happen in the NFL come draft time. We had the uptick at the beginning like we're supposed to. Now we're in the lull before the draft, and then everything's just going to blow up come draft time, and I'm just so excited to see what's going to happen.
Last year, who saw the A.J. Brown trade to the Eagles? There was no buzz about that at all until it happened, and everyone was like, wait, they did what? They did what? And what's that what move going to be this year? Because nobody saw that one coming, and I'm excited to see if this is another year that we get something like that.
It was just crazy. Nobody saw that coming.
Apparently, Mike Vrabel didn't even see that one coming.
That's the word on the street, right? Like, I didn't even know. I was going. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, exactly. What's going to happen? Is Lamar Jackson going to get dealt for, like, someone's entire draft? Is Rodgers finally going to finalize the deal, like, during the draft or drafting? I don't know.
It seems like Rodgers, if he's really going to the Jets, I think it almost has to be before the draft. And I think the Packers will kind of want to make sure of that. Like, they want the picks this year. Something tells me with Lamar Jackson that his trade may not be, if he is traded, it may not be until after the draft. Like, it doesn't seem like anybody's running to get Lamar right now. Unless these Patriot rumors are true, that they're really looking to move on from Mac Jones and they're going to make some kind of crazy move for Lamar Jackson. But because, like, a team to get Lamar Jackson doesn't necessarily have to traditionally trade, right? Because of the non-exclusive franchise tag, they can simply just negotiate the new deal with them and they would owe the Ravens 2 first-round picks per the tag. They can do that after the draft and not lose their pick this year by doing so.
I don't think anybody wants to give up those picks. I don't think anybody is going to bite. I think Jackson's going to be stuck in Baltimore. I think the real question is, will Lamar Jackson play for Baltimore? I think he will be in Baltimore, but will he actually play for them? I think that's the actual question going on in Baltimore right now.
Well, it might be a game of chicken, right? The Baltimore saying, look, he's not going to sit out and lose all this money. And Lamar kind of saying, look, they wouldn't dare not pay me and risk me sitting out. And then it might be one of those things where they're just both going to see what each other does the first couple weeks of the season. And if a new deal isn't done and Lamar does decide to sit out, you could see him traded at the trade deadline as opposed to before the season.
I suppose that could happen. It's just with all that money, I don't know. I just feel like something would have happened there already.
Yeah, but if he truly thinks he's going to get something like $200 million guaranteed, he may say, I'll sacrifice the $35 million, whatever it is this year on the franchise tag, because I'm not risking getting hurt and not getting my $200 million. Or another scenario, there's some rumors out there, some people around the NFL feel like Lamar Jackson was healthy enough to play at the end of last year, that he could have played in that playoff game and he chose not to, right?
Did you hear that?
Would it shock you if Lamar Jackson shows up for week 1, has a mystical injury in the first half of that game, because now he's guaranteed his money from the franchise tag? Because he played and got injured, right? And now, I'm too hurt to play, can't play anymore.
Will he play in Baltimore is the big question. We've been talking AFC West. We've been talking a little Lamar Jackson. We're always talking NFL with Adam Hulse, at Adam Hulse on Twitter. He's on Sportskeeda. Amazing articles, always an amazing conversation. One of the best out there. Adam, thanks once again for joining us on the show.
It's a blast doing it every week. We only got a couple more until the draft, a couple more divisions to cover. September. Can't wait.
Right around the corner. That FN Sports Show, EFIN. We do this every week with Adam, and it's a blast. Find us on Twitter at That FN Show. Find us on YouTube. Find us wherever your favorite Spotify, iHeart, Apple, we're there. So listen to Adam, listen to us every week. Thanks for joining us. A couple more weeks, NFL draft. Everybody be safe.